wrong if you try to sell it. We'll just send Frankie over there.
Right.
Okay. Nothing like that, like
Yeah.
technology.
He's proving his point.
Now hopefully everything. The holidays always good. So, I'm gonna start off before I request the money off of you, since we have three new commissioners, a little bit of background on the IT side of things and what I have to deal with and stuff like that. So, these are just my primary roles, I guess, as the case is. So at infrastructure management, we have 9 physical servers with about 25 virtual servers hosted on those. Part of what I'm going to be requesting is to kind of minimize the physical server part of it. So there's not as much maintenance, electric costs, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a lot of them that are coming end of life from Microsoft. So I would do all the workstation maintenance, purchasing, all of that. For the network, the firewall switches, wireless access points, bridges, all kinds of fun stuff there. The infrastructure security, which is partially the firewall, but also it's firmware updates, making sure that the individual devices haven't been breached, things like that. So there's lots of little things that go into every bit of it. Top of that is the phone system, so assigning phone numbers, phones, all of that. The security systems, so access control systems for this building, power plant, museum, PD. I think that's all of them. But the access control for that, security cameras at I think 5 or 6 different locations. General help desk, so if somebody has an issue that's IT related, I try to take care of it as quickly as I can. The public content management is, I'm the administrator for the Facebook pages, websites. Doesn't mean I post on them all the time, but that way there's one point of contact for major issues I happen with those. Inventory management and ordering is not only the computers, software, ink and toner, things like that. So all different aspects. Software licensing and management, and this one kind of boils down to mostly Microsoft, because they like to license you for everything you do. And then user management, so which users go to which domains, things like that. This is just a brief network map that shows how interconnected all of our different facilities are to this building. This is the primary location. So the red on here is for fiber. So we did a fiber upgrade 5, 6 years ago now. That interconnected all of our different locations. The black lines on between switches are an actual Cat6, Cat5 network cable. The blue on the antenna looking ones are wireless bridges. So we have some locations that it was going to be way too cost prohibitive to actually run fiber to. So we have basically it's a wireless link that runs from point A to point B. There's 15 of those devices that we use. And it was an easy solution for a high monetary issue. So you guys have any questions on that part or anything like that?
I'm gonna look super complicated, sure.
Yeah. Where is mine? Okay, so the IT department doesn't actually have a budget per se. We just have a single MRF account that we use for all of the big purchases, switches, group software that goes toward everybody for things like that. The servers, access points, anything that's not used by a singular department. So if Public Works and their street department, they have their sign software. That is their responsibility. There's not much on the software side that I would ever take out of this account, except for when I'm getting ready to ask you for it. Because it has more to do with the servers than it does an actual department. So this fund was established in 2020. Funds are transferred by each department into that one fund. Makes budgeting a lot easier for everybody and for purchasing a lot easier. Between 2015 and 2019, there wasn't an actual IT budget or a fund for that matter. It was each department added to one of their existing line items. And then if I really had something come up, then we had to figure out where we were pulling from. I worked with the other departments on their budgetary requirements for their individual computers, monitors, printers, things like that. But that's pretty much the basis for the IT budgetary part of it. So, any questions on that?
I don't think so.
When we eventually have a tour of city facilities, then we will visit Josh's dungeon downstairs. And
Please give me notice so I can clean out excess cabling. There's always cabling everywhere, so. Okay, so what I'm requesting tonight is I want to fully license at least one of our physical servers with the Windows Server Data Center Edition. There's two different versions of Windows servers. You have the standard license and you have a data center license. The standard license gives you two virtual machines. Well, we have 13 virtual machines running right now. So I would need at least 7 of the standard licenses to cover what we have. That also limits them to being on a single server. So our ultimate goal is to make it to where if one server needs maintenance, as in base OS updates, we can migrate things over to another one to make sure that everything can keep running without shutting anything down. We do have a couple of departments that are 24/7, so those it's a lot more difficult not to be able to migrate. Remember what all I put on here. So. Yeah, basically licensing both servers allows for maintenance on either one of them and being able to migrate those loads back and forth for stuff like that. One system starts running a little bit slow, well, we could possibly throw it over to a different system to help mitigate some of those load issues. Right now, most of our servers never run at a very high load. CPU usage is, what I was looking at today, less than 10% on any one of our servers. RAM usage is, I try to keep it about half. It can go much higher than what we have, but it's just one of those benefits to having that redundancy and having similar systems. If we were able to do this, because we have certain virtual machines that are stationary on a single server because of the licensing that we've had in the past, I would be able to retire 3 servers. These are all older servers that were bought more or less for a very specific purpose, so those licenses had to stay with them. The data center license, again, it gives us that ability to move things around. So now into the fun part of it, the dollar amounts. So with any Windows server purchase, you have to have what we call CALs, or client access licenses. Microsoft has 2 different variations. I'm only going to focus on the one that's actually relevant to what we're doing. And that's the user CAL, where we license each user, not each device. To do just one server this year, and then maybe do one next year, depending on how prices go. The last time they upped prices, it was 13% overall. So each data center runs about 4,000. For the number of user CALs that we need is about 1,500. So to do a single server, 5,500, obviously, give or take. And then to do both of our primary servers, which we've purchased within the last 2 or 3 years, is gonna be the 9,500. These are the best prices I could find at the time. They do fluctuate a little bit, but this should be pretty close. And this is all funds that we have in that IT RIF account.
Josh, how much life expectancy is there on those servers continuing to, anticipate or possibility that you don't get a vote for this tonight? How much longer will they last?
The operating systems that are on them right now are end of life in, I believe, December of 2023. Which is, it seems like a long time. However, in order to fully migrate, say, our domain controllers, you can simply slap another one up and hopefully clone everything, jumping from server 2012 R2 up to, say, server 22. There's a lot of things I've changed. If you try to do a direct import, it's inevitably going to cause issues. Even going to one version, so from 2012 to 2016, would have major issues. Just because of the way that they've changed anything, it'd be like going from Windows XP to Windows 10. So there's always those jumps that cause other issues. We could get by and keep running them for 2-3 years. I would rather not, mainly for the security implications. You start running a server OS that houses most of your important financial information, user information, stuff like that. On an insecure server, you're asking for issues. Even if we have every other security hole buttoned up, that is still a weak point. So,
Okay, thank you.
answer that well enough for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other questions so far? That's all I have.
Any other thoughts? I mean, I'm a big fan, especially in this day and age where more and more of what we do relies on the technology that it's riding on, that we stay up to date on good technology, as far as, what we have financially available and what these costs are. It looks like it's going to strap your money quite a bit for things that may come up.
It'll take about half of my current budget for
Mhm.
that fund. I don't have that much planned on top of that. The biggest things that cost money for that can really come out of this are servers. And like I said earlier, the 2 servers that I would be licensing are both ones that are less than 3 years old. We have servers that were made in 2011.
I just wanted to clarify, you're asking to do both servers?
I would much rather do both servers right now. We can get by with just doing the one.
And that means nothing like next year. We would be all up to date.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will probably take me well into next year
Sure,
to get everything migrated and everything done.
sure, but you'd have everything
Yeah.
you need to do that. Okay.
From the server point of view. There
Yeah,
may be
from
other-
the actual operating systems. of the
Correct.
servers.
Yes.
I think with the amount of confidential information that the city has to protect, that it's probably a necessary expenditure that we do what we can to make sure that everybody's data is protected, especially with different things that go on in the world right now with data breaches and things like that. So,
I try to limit our exposure as much as possible. But again, there's no perfection to being able to keep them out. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. And there wouldn't be all the data breaches and crypto and all of that, so.
Hey, anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we direct Joshua Jordan, IT Director, to purchase the equipment and upgrade servers as presented.
Second.
So just to clarify, we're looking at the You're saying the 2 servers and all 42 of the access licenses?
That is
what you're
correct.
referring to?
The estimated amount of around 9564.50.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Redland, a second by Commissioner Myers. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Mary, read the roll, please.
Howard,
Yes.
Redmond,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item C, police vehicle bids. Frankie.
Get a Hummer.
No, it's not getting a Hummer.
Okay, so when budget time came around, we presented, I believe, one vehicle. And I think there was a miscommunication before the actual presentation. So I'm reading the same thing, I think, since y'all the summary of the commission communication form. So at this time, we got two different, sent out for bids, and only one returned, and that was Dan Brenner Ford, and he bid out for 2 vehicles. So with this option, or with an option that I want to present to you is a lease purchase option for the second vehicle. First vehicle is, we already have the money in MERV for that. So the second vehicle, we would be looking at a lease purchase, which is basically, we get the vehicle now and we pay for it out of 2023 budget.
Part of the reasoning that this came up is when Chief Hayes talked with Brenner Ford and also with the other dealers as far, part of the discussion revolved around the delivery time for getting the vehicles here. And they came back and they said the delivery time would be about 6 months.
A minimum of 6.
A minimum of 6 months, which at this point could be anywhere in the last half of the year at a minimum. So, and we don't know if there will be further breakdowns, you know, in that supply. So there was discussion among staff as far as, okay, if that's going to happen and it's not going to be delivered to the last half of the year, let's investigate an additional option as far as a lease purchase option for the second vehicle. And Chief Hayes will speak to what they perceive as need to regarding the vehicles and how they want to make it a standard operating procedure to how they rotate vehicles. But they understand it's not, one vehicle is budgeted and the second vehicle was just an option that came up as a possibility to be able to get accomplished both at the same time, at least order them. Actually, they both may come, you know, almost after we're done budgeting for 2023. I mean, it wouldn't take that much to have it in August or September before we receive it. And we'll have the budget for 2023 completed by that time. So that was part of the discussion that surrounded it. It's not having a formal request saying this has to be done. The police department can make it work with either 1 or 2 vehicles. It would just, both from an inflation standpoint and a delivery standpoint, thought it might be worthwhile to pursue this option. So, Frank, you want to speak about the vehicles and the discussion regarding it?
Right. So Kent and I both talked about setting a standard for rotation of vehicles. I've reached out to a couple of chief, Colby did contact me back, and we had a discussion. They rotate theirs out every 4 years. Now granted, they're not take-home cars like ours. So, of course, they're gonna get more miles on it because they're constantly moving. But I would like to set a standard for that, whether it be years, mileage, just something for us to gauge, as we look into, rotation. The two vehicles that I am looking at replacing is, and this is on the sheet that I guess was on your table.
We have it, yep.
Is the 2013 Chevy Silverado and 2014 F-150. So if we're looking at, and those two vehicles are, the mileage is as of today. So if you're looking at, a minimum of 6 months, the Chevy is gonna it's gonna be well over 100,000. The Chevy is what they are driving, right, well, Officer Crosby is driving to the academy every week. So that'll go for 14 weeks. Then after that, we have another officer going to the academy. So it'll be, that as well. So on an average, now I wasn't here in 2013, 2014, so I don't know when we actually got these, if it was at the middle of the year or whatever. So the average per year is just my best guesstimation. And I believe that would be higher just because I think that these two vehicles are kind of, right now, they haven't been driven for a while because of the staff. But we have all 9 officers now, so when they come back from the academy, this will be the vehicles they drive. So they'll be on the same as the Explorers, they'll be on the road every shift, or every one of their shifts, I should say. So if we're looking at a minimum of, say, July, before we even receive these vehicles, and you have to understand too, once we receive the vehicles, doesn't mean we hop in them and drive. They have to get everything equipped. It has to be equipped. The cage has to go in, the radios have to go in, the siren box has to, all this has to go in. That takes quite a while. We have Levi that does that for us, and if something major comes up that he has to stop work on it and go take care of other things, then that just pushes it back further and further. So there's really no guarantee when these new vehicles would be ready. Like Ken said, it could be August, it could be September, we just don't know. It depends on when they come in, when the equipment comes in, they could be back ordered. So that's kind of, it's a guessing game for all of us right now. But I know that Mr. Brenner did say it's a minimum of 6 months. And I think that was even on the bid, if I'm not mistaken. So what I'm asking is basically 2 things. If we can set a standard on rotation, so there's no confusion with me or me coming to ask for something, that it's like, okay, we set the standard at 80,000 miles and I come at 70, I should be able to articulate why I'm asking with 10,000 miles left. KHP, I know, and I discussed this in my presentation for budget, KHP turns their vehicles in at 50,000 miles. Actually, probably 49, because they have to have time to drive from here to wherever they drive it to. So at 50,000 miles, they trade them in. I'm not asking for that. I think that's, to me, that's a little early. I think we could get more life out of them. But you have to understand that this isn't, I'm gonna drive to work, drive to Walmart, I'm gonna run to Burlington to eat, or whatever. These are hard miles that are put on these vehicles. It's hard stops, it's hard starts, or acceleration sometimes, idle time, you know. So I get that, and I believe Aaron made mention that's not a lot of miles. On the odometer, it's not, but on the engine, it is. So, that's kind of where I'm at with this, you know, with these two vehicles. And the other thing that I'm asking for is to do the lease purchase, where we can order both vehicles at the same time, but not pay for the second one until 2023. Because once you get out of this rotation, we haven't bought a new vehicle, excluding mine, which I wasn't part of that, but it's 2018. So, you know, you're looking at going on 4 years, and if you look at the mileage, and some of this is back from November when I first started doing it. You know, we have one vehicle, a 2016, that's got 67,000 miles. Another 2016 was almost 72,000 miles. Then you got the other 2016 at 63, going on 64. 2018, that's even at 45. And 2017 at 52. So if you get out of this rotation, then when it comes time, say for the 2016s, we're still going to be going with the 2013, 2014. You know, would I be able to get a few more years out of these? Possibly. On 3 of these Explorers, we've already had to change the water pump, probably within a month and a half period. So it's, you know, when things start breaking, it's like a snowball. So that is the 2 things that I am asking for, is to get some kind of standard and the lease purchase. So does anybody have any questions or?
Chief Hayes, you're talking about the standard. What standard are you wanting to set? What are you looking at?
Whether it be, you know, we'll rotate vehicles at 80,000 miles, or 5 years, or 6 years. Just something that I can gauge to say, okay, it's time to turn it in. And that not only helps me, you know, when I'm thinking about the following year's budget, it also helps the commission, knowing that.
I understand that part. What I'm trying to get you to, or what I would like you to answer is, you're the department head. What is the standards you want? What's your recommendation?
Okay. I would say to start looking between 80 and 90,000 miles. And the reason I picked that is because if you hit 80,000 miles, and you're in June of 2022, then by the time you budget for it and it comes in, you're gonna be, you know, probably 90, you know, around in there. So I can better gauge at, you know, the year before, okay, this vehicle is on track to hit 90,000 miles by the time, you know, by the time we would receive a new one. So I would say anywhere from 80, I would say 80 would be a good number for me.
So with this lease purchase agreement, you're gonna pay for the car in your coming year's budget, but by these numbers here, you have 3 vehicles that are gonna need rotated out in your 2023 budget. So we'd be paying for potentially 3, we'd be asking for 3 vehicles plus paying a 4th.
I can't answer that because I don't know is, in, like I said, the mileage, you know, if it averages what my approximate average per year is, then it would be close. The thing about this lease purchase is it can be extended. So, let's say 2023 budget comes around, I pay for that second vehicle that I'm asking for now. We can go back to the bank and say, we need to extend, you know, this, and they would extend it for us. And I get it's almost like chasing your tail, but eventually you will catch up. If, in my opinion, if we can get that standard set, I think we can catch up with that. Because like I said, I mean, 4 years, you know, we haven't bought a vehicle. And also with this, if I was allowed to do the lease purchase for the second vehicle, so what happens to these two vehicles? We've had discussions about that, and I would actually offer one to, say, the Parks Department or Electrical Department, whoever needed a vehicle. That way, they wouldn't have to go out and buy a brand new one, maybe next year. They could, you know, hang on to this one, and then sell one to kind of offset the cost of outfitting and the vehicle in general. So that's, you know, and if I go to the other department heads and they say, no, we don't need it, then sell both of them and offset that cost. A lot of the equipment from these two vehicles, we can reuse, light bar, the different lights in it. The only thing we can't reuse is like a cage, because they're kind of year specific. But pretty much everything else we can reuse.
So do you have a number on what the price of the cage would be, ballpark, and the lettering price?
The graphics, I want to say, because I talked to Leon, and this has been a while back, but looking at the graphics I looked at then and looking at the ones now, the ones I'm looking at for now are, they're kind of more plain, so I don't think it'll be as expensive. And the cage, I can't remember offhand what that price was. I want to say it's around $500, $600, around in there. It could be a little bit more, but that's about close to where it's at.
What are the details of the lease?
Mary?
That would have to come at the next meeting regarding the lease payment agreement itself. It would just be authorizing staff to go bring the lease payment agreement to you.
And the bank doesn't initiate the lease purchase until we get the vehicles in, so you're only, so when I know the vehicles are in, that's when they initiate the lease purchase, so you're only paying interest from that day. You're not paying it from now. And then typically what they've done in the past is they've set it up so that you pay one payment a year. And then, like he said, if we've had other vehicles, then they would extend it. But as far as the terms, they won't initiate the lease until we know the vehicles are in, so that we do not pay interest on money we don't need.
Okay, I know, I appreciate what it is you're wanting to do with the vehicles, with making it easier for you to see when your rotation is gonna come in and out. As far as, you know, on the budgetary side of what the commission's looking at, you know, that makes things a little more difficult as to, you know, when you're making your budget and you're putting your money that you want to set aside in the MERV for vehicles, that's an easy see, okay, you have the money or you don't have the money. You know, we're just kind of working on leases and, you know, things that may not be coming in or out at the same time, maybe different times a year, 2 vehicles 1 year. you know, one the next year after that, you know, for one commission that's sitting here for the same 2 years, that's a little easier to navigate than say in 4 years when it's 4 new people up here that may or may not agree with that concept. You know, it's hard to, I think, for us to promise you any kind of continuity within the future just because the people up here change so often.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't, for me personally, I think I still like the idea of just budgeting the money aside in the MRF, you know, looking ahead, trying to figure out how much money we need to try to budget for that and do it that way. But that's just my own personal feelings on it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that maybe that needs to be more of a departmental goal. You know, if you wanna set your goal at, you know, your budget and try to do that at 80 or 90,000 miles, then that could be something that you're trying to do. I think, you know, there definitely needs to be a rotation, but I think you need to handle that and then just bring that during the budgeting process. But
Sure.
I think, you know, what you've done to try to correct this problem with these older vehicles, I think is a creative way to try to fix this problem. I am really concerned about what's gonna happen in 2023, because through vehicles that could potentially all need to be rotated out at the same time, they're gonna be a big chunk, so I would encourage you to try to figure out how to get the most life out of those 2016s.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, as far as this proposal today, I don't have a problem, just because we're at a point where if we were to agree with the lease, we have this year's budget to look at to determine how much money needs to be put in for next year to pay for that lease agreement. You know, so as far as like needing the 2 vehicles to replace these, you know, I could see that being an okay way to do it at this, for now, for this.
Sure.
But as far as, like I said, guaranteeing into the future when a rotation is gonna happen within the vehicles, you know, I have a harder time with that.
No, and I totally understand what you're saying, that should come from me. And, you know, if I set it as a department head at 80,000, then that's when I should present vehicle. I totally understand that, and I agree with that, I do.
And we, as I said, it's been a couple of years since something's been bought, but we know approximately each budget cycle, is it about enough for a vehicle each year that's put aside in the budget?
Well, so there really wasn't any money put aside for vehicles, as far as, you know, I'm gonna take $10,000 a year, put it in MRF for a vehicle. That was not done, as far as I know. With me still being kinda, you know, new to the whole budget, this is my first budget. So, but looking at budgets in the past, I've never seen anything. It's just, it was brought up, it was presented, and it was put in as a line item, for new equipment. So that's kinda how, you know, we did it this year, and I believe you made the suggestion to start putting it in MRF, which we did. And I think that's a good way to kinda offset some of the cost when it comes up, you know, when the rotation. So that's what we've been doing, or that's what we did with this one vehicle. We put the money in MRF for that, so.
And I think it just, once you miss a few years, and you talk, Mayor, when you talked about, you know, the continuity and the additional years that come up, once you get out of the schedule for a few years, it ends up biting you on the back end, and that several come up at the same time. We have 9 vehicles, how do you change them out over 6, 7, 8 years, you know? And if you miss 3 years in between, it starts making it rough. And so when it comes back, that's just part of the background to the information that will be presented.
Yeah, and you said had to do a couple water pumps recently, right?
3, actually.
Has there been any other major issues with the vehicles other than the water pumps given out?
Not to
Beyond
my knowledge.
Standard maintenance, wear and tear?
Not to my knowledge. nothing major. I know even just for the water pump, you have to drop the engine, and, you know, I wasn't Levi's favorite after that month and a half, but,
That'll make things easy these days.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I don't know if, I mean, it's not, I know ideally it's, you know, you want to get a vehicle in and out before you have any major issues, you know, you want.
Right, yeah, there's resale value and all that too, you know, but, I think by the time we get these two vehicles, they'll be a lot more up in mileage, and, you know, I just worry about, because, you know, if you're going to a class, or you're going to, you know, to a call, and it breaks down, which I understand, even a new vehicle can break down, but, you know, you weigh the odds of, you know, a 8-year-old, 9-year-old vehicle breaking down versus a 1-year-old vehicle. Your odds are pretty good with a newer vehicle, but, yeah, that is a concern also.
So is the idea with the lease that, since we know what the dollar amount would be for that second vehicle, to put that amount for that vehicle in the budget for next year to just pay off that lease? Is that-
Yes, I would know, it would be the same as the first vehicle. Because I will outfit it the same, you know, like I said, we reuse the stuff from these two trucks, you know, a lot of that stuff. So it will be the same exact as the other vehicle. So once I get that total, then I'll know what to put in the budget for 2023 to pay that off.
Okay, so basically what we're looking to decide is either
One or two.
one or two, we're done.
I've got one more question,
Yes.
if I may.
Go ahead.
Does the warranty change if it's considered a police vehicle at all?
No,
It's still the
It's still
same,
the
whatever
same.
the 5 years, 60,000 or whatever it is?
yeah.
Okay.
I think these are 3 and 36 as far as,
Yeah, it varies on like your block trainee rear end
right.
stuff, so that could be the 3-year, 36,000.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it said on the bid, but
I think everything else is like 5 years, 60, if
Yeah.
I'm correct.
that's about right, yeah.
No, it doesn't say on the bill sheet there.
Yeah, I can get that from Don Ann, so. It's just more, just curiosity, if that was a thing that was changed.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments?
A motion that we direct Frankie to go ahead and purchase the first vehicle and pursue the lease on the second vehicle.
Have a motion by Commissioner Showalter. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? Mary?
Redmond,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to 6, discussion of cemetery board application.
Have, basically a reappointment to the cemetery board. Richard has served on the board since 2013 and has served as chairman the past several years. In fact, at the last cemetery board, they had an officer setting the officers, and they wouldn't let him get out of the chairman seat. So he will continue as chairman, and this is a request for reappointment to the cemetery board.
Richard Hayden.
Motion by Commissioner Showalter,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Redland. Any other questions? Mary?
Yes. Howard,
Yes.
Redland,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, B, museum board application of Molly Witzel.
I think anybody
Yeah.
wanting to serve.
You can if you want, no. The museum, executive director, Sammy is here. She could probably say a couple words regarding Monolith, but she's completed an application to serve on the museum board. Did you have anything else to go with her application, Sammy? No? She'll complete the unexpired term from Jason leaving so hastily from the museum board to serve on city commission.
Anybody that wants to serve,
Yeah.
let them do it.
I always appreciate anybody willing to
Yeah.
put their time and effort into help serving on these boards. Anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve Molly's application to replace me.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Showalter, second by Commissioner Redland. Any other discussion? Mary?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay, C, preparations for the city-county joint meeting. Kent?
Well, I was requested to put this on here by Mayor Thompson, and I came up with the commissioners. At some point in February, we'll have a joint meeting with the county commissioners to start discussing, starting to come together as far as what we would like to do together regarding the sales tax issue. The sales tax for roads that was presented on the ballot in November, and it didn't pass. So part of the communication afterward was that the county commissioners wanted to talk, have a discussion with the city commission after the new city commission board took place. Because we contacted them within a week after the election, and they said they'd rather wait until there was the new commissioners on board so they could fully support whatever would be put on the ballot, if something would be put on the ballot. So, as we move towards that, is there anything that you would like staff to prepare, or anything that you would like to have as part of the information basis for that discussion?
Yeah, I think, just as a commissioner as a whole, everybody just needs to kind of think about themselves, how they feel the city falls in as far as the sales tax go, what we feel our needs are. As far as preparation, it would be nice to know, have an idea of maybe what our biggest needs are as far as what roads need to be replaced sooner rather than later. What kind of a cost per block or whatever we may be looking at, both maybe concrete and asphalt. Just a good general idea of what kind of dollars we'd be looking at over the next 20 years if we were to replace all of our major roads or whichever streets, we deem are the most important for the funds. But just so that we have a better understanding of where we are as far as on the financial side of the need as we prepare to discuss with the county, because I feel like they have a pretty good idea of what they feel their needs are, but we may not be as prepared as what we feel our needs are.
Sure. The common discussion, and I can wait for other people to come in, or I can respond right now to what you asked.
Go ahead. Good.
A couple of the comments that have been made previously is, in the sales tax, what it's used for is basically the major projects that can't be handled with our normal funding for streets. We do a pretty good job right now, our street department, as far as doing certain things to maintain all the streets we have here in town. What gets difficult is to have a bigger project to handle the arterials. And that's what both the previous commission and what I've heard as far as the individual discussions with the commissioners is regarding 8th Street, regarding the rest of 17th Street, and regarding Caldwell, which are kind of the main routes around town. I did ask, Andrew with EBH to give me just a ballpark figure as far as cost to do a concrete street, and he basically took it as 400 lineal feet times 45 feet wide. And that might be an additional discussion item at some point regarding the width of the road, because we have wide roads. But for your arterials, you're gonna want a little wider than, it's just that all of our roads are very wide here in Goodland, or the vast majority of them are. But he had a basic cost of about 300,000 per that 400 lineal feet, which is about a block. If you would do a future cost, you know, trying to guesstimate 3 to 5 years out, that would end up to be about 390,000 per block. And it would end up for A Street, let's do from where the concrete ends at Delau, as you come off of Highway 27. Starting there and going to Main Street, you end up at about almost 4 million. It would be 3.15 million in the $300,000 per block figure. It would end up to be about 4 million in, you know, costs in about 3 to 5 years, and some of that is a guesstimate. That could go down. I don't think anything's going down in the near future. It may go down quite a bit in the longer future, but, and that's for concrete. That's not the asphalt option. And there may be, you know, when I was talking with Superintendent Keith regarding that they did do mill and overlay regarding Caldwell from 10th up to the airport, you know, trying to figure out how to do a mill and overlay for Caldwell from 10th down to 17th. That might be a better option than trying to make that a concrete street. The truck traffic on 17th for Schooler and, you know, the other grain that passes through that area. That's why we're putting concrete from basically Center Street next to Main Street to between Kansas and Montana later this year. And to do 17th Street, finish that up the rest of the way to Cattle Trail might be a good use to make that street really hold up the truck traffic, because truck traffic really impacts your roads more than any number of cars. Now, one benefit we have is with the streets in town, we're a grid city. So there isn't a huge amount of traffic in beyond certain streets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even from the schools, you get away 2 blocks, you can go 6 different directions to get to the school. And people do it when they leave Max Jones or leave, you know, some other event at the high school or the college. So there isn't as much wear and tear. But Superintendent Keith also gave me that in the 2000s, the aughts, the zeros, it took us about, I'm going to say the wrong time frame, 7 or 8 years, 8 years to chip and seal basically every street that's either not brick street or is not a major arterial. So we were able to do the entire town in about 8 years. Now with the costs, it's basically at least 12 years, if not 13 or 14 years. And in 2017, and the commission made that decision to concrete a few streets, one because of a water line project, some, you know, other reasons. Concrete a few streets, but then that eliminated the chip and seal entirely for that year, so it pushed it out. That gives you an example of doing those things, doing a major project, hurts you on the annual maintenance. And to do every street in town with some sort of maintenance, whether it's chip and seal, whether it's some other type of maintenance, to do it twice, and Andrew can at some point can do a life cycle cost basis between asphalt and concrete, because that does get interesting. But to only do that twice in a 25-year time frame, there will be a result eventually. instead of an every 8-year time frame, doing it every 12 or 13 years. It won't be in the next few years. And we do have fairly decent streets. There's been a lot worse streets that I've seen in various places. Now that doesn't mean there's certain things that don't need to be addressed. But that gives you an idea regarding our regular maintenance, and it can't afford to do the big project in addition to the chip and seal type thing. Or if we do, you use grants and Department of Transportation thing to redo part of the brick streets. And there's several more blocks of brick street that needs to be addressed. But that's for every community. There's never enough for streets. So, but this is a funding source, and it did work for a while. And it did for the project that was done. But that project was completed as of what, 2010, 2009? The sales tax started in 2006 or 7. And it was supposed to be for 20 years, and it's getting paid off early. That's what why this discussion is coming up, because everything's been paid off. It'll be paid off early as of July of 23. So it got finished in 16 years or 17 years instead of 20. So I know there's going to be some discussion when the two commissions get together as far as number of years. To put that'll be part of the discussion. And then also the projects and how to split and, those would be the general topics. And I don't know what other topics. I'm sure there'll be one or two wild cards in addition to that. But
I think they'll bring up that they want to do it as pay as you go, as we get it. And if we do that, I think we're behind the 8 ball yet.
yeah, I think with inflation right now, we're not going to be able to do that. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's $3 to $4 million to do that entire A Street from Delisle to Maine, as an example. I mean, I don't know what the actual cost would be, but to do only 2 blocks at a time, it'll be a higher cost per yard. I mean, the unit cost will be higher because you won't get as many bids and you won't get different types of contractors involved. And then it may be more cost the next year when you do the next 2 blocks. So it may work for the counties, but does that need to be voted on? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else?
We're in math. Hold on. So I just did some quick math just to see. So if we were to do the 4 million from the DeLeo Apartments to Maine, right, is what we estimated, roughly around 4 million. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If we did
Roughly.
it right now if you did it right, so that 3 million, the 300,000 per block, around that 3 million, 3.1 million, that was based off of bid tabulations that we had from the 17th and 2nd Street, bid tabs from Sporer and Miller. And so that's kind of with inflation, you would assume that's kind of the lower end that you're gonna see. Okay.
You're only gonna see something higher, so, like Kent said, is this something that's gonna happen in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? How do you, it's only a guess. And so yeah, there was an inflation piece thrown on there, and that's where that $4 million, just under $4 million came.
The other thing that Andrew and I discussed was whether it was just construction cost or design, construction, and inspection, because there's a little bit of engineering that goes along with it. Usually about 10 to 15% of the cost total between design and inspection, so.
I think it's also important that we consider, while the road's up, we replace water lines and things like that need to be replaced as well. But if you just look at the rough math, because the 1% is supposed to be $1.5 million, I think is what it is. And if we asked for a quarter, which is like close to what we asked for on this previous one, that comes out to like 375,000 a year is what we would accumulate. And so that would take 10 years, 10 and 2/3 years to pay off that project. So I guess I'm just saying, like, the idea of, paying as we go, I don't think that's feasible whatsoever. Because even at the 375, if we're expecting inflation in 5 years to be 390, we're gonna be short on that road. So, just giving you guys some
Food
Food for thought.
food for thought. That's really not the avenue to go, in my opinion, but. Anyway.
Thank you.
Anybody
Anybody
else?
else?
Okay,
Okay,
let's move on to the reports then.
City manager reports,
Ken?
Ken?
I guess the official items on the agenda say the next commission work session. We will have, as Jaleesa said earlier in the evening, we'll have a joint meeting with the city and county on the 31st. We have an extra week between meetings this upcoming, it's a bye week. We made it through, it's January madness, not March madness, but it's
What time is that meeting?
It's gonna be 5 o'clock after you walk over. I just confirmed that, I wanted to make sure to use that building, so I'll
Okay.
set that up tomorrow. But yes. Sorry to keep you behind.
It's okay.
Is the housing study the only thing on the agenda for that meeting?
We'll also want to discuss one other thing regarding regarding flatlanders. What's the key word regarding that, Jaleesa?
I was kind of seeing what that looks like moving forward as a community, what that looks like as our role. We've talked with the board a little bit about wanting to take that over as SUCD, getting it back into the hands of the community, and taking some of the burden off of them as well. So just seeing where that stands with it comes to the city and county together and how we can make that more of a community event rather than a board event, so.
Some one other small item regarding housing study. So. And then just as far as the next commission work session, just trying to continue regarding the planning session that we worked on last week. And I don't have a suggested date, so.
Our next meeting is
The
the
7th,
7th,
right?
right? So we wanted to sneak one in for the next meeting, it's got the next couple of weeks. So we want to do Monday, 31st, it's already taken up.
Sorry.
Next Monday could be, one of them doesn't have to be on a Monday, you know, it could be any other evening that works for everybody.
For
Or anything
anything
that
that
won't
won't.
work for anybody, for sure.
I guess we're only doing weekdays, never mind.
Next week, anytime is fine with me. It's every Friday.
My preference would be Thursday.
It works for me.
Thursday. I'm busy on Thursdays.
Yeah, I can't do Thursdays.
Okay, so Thursday's out, and the other days.
Sorry.
Would
Wednesday work?
For me, I'm gone.
Would
Would
Wednesday work?
Wednesdays work one half.
Or Monday, I'm good next Monday,
Jason, do we have,
No, I've got basketball next Wednesday.
okay?
Monday it is.
Monday? Or could be the following week, you know, we got that following week.
If
If
it
it doesn't work, we
we
could wait until after the next meeting to get back together.
I could do the 24th.
I guess Monday works for me.
And that's at 5 PM too?
Yeah.
That work for everybody? Next Monday at 5, work session. Okay, anything else?
A couple other things, I thought, I don't know, these are in no particular order. We had dog tag day today, it was successful. We had 399 people come in for today, so that's a pretty good number. Another community, we only had 20 dog license people who actually came in for the dog license, so we had 400, that's pretty good. But it is a little bit less than the previous year. The tractor, our wonderful city tractor, it's not the city's tractor. The tractor that's on 12th Avenue, I was told by Nick, who's the interim director at the Art Center, that it will be moved. Someone has bought it and it will be moved Sunday. So we're working on a couple different details regarding that, but it will be moved and off the street and out of the community by Sunday. So we're taking care of. Our building official, Jeff Dinkle, he did complete
the first of many certifications regarding residential building inspector last week. Or he completed the courses and then he took the test yesterday and was able to get passing grade. So it worked. He's completed that. He will be heading back for either commercial inspection or plan review will be the next set that he will do as far as that certification, but he's completed one already. So that was within 2 months of his hire, so I do appreciate that.
Yep, it's good.
And I thought the employee holiday party went well on Saturday evening. Appreciate that you all attended and that the employees who attended as well. I thought it went well. So I haven't heard anybody say that was awful, so it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I had a good time. Anybody else have any questions for Kent? Okay, move on to B, City Attorney, about Open Meeting Act information.
Good evening.
Mr. Clinton.
Easy, Jason. So, hello, new commissioners. I say old commissioners, but I'll be honest with you, in my tenure as the city attorney here, you guys are the youngest as far as elected commissioners I've ever had. Which is kind of fun. This is interesting. You might actually enjoy this Kansas Open Meetings Act refresher that we kind of go through, at least for 3 of you. You've never had to deal with it before, at least from your types of chairs, but it's important for you to know. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about me. I'm your city attorney. What that really means is I represent you both as far as the civil side, which contributes to most of what you were talking about. One, let's talk about leases, let's talk about contracts, let's talk about acquisition of real property, let's talk about your employment matters, let's talk about your department heads and whatever policies and stuff you want to put together. I don't make decisions as far as policies, that's your guys' job and your department heads to put all that stuff together, right? That's not me. I'm not here to tell you, well, this would be better, this would be this. I'm here to tell you kind of the ramifications and really what's in the rules, okay? I'm gonna use that a lot as that backstop there, especially as we get started, right? So I'm gonna be upfront and frank with you, but at the end of the day, you guys make the decision. That's why you were elected, that's why you're put in those spots, okay? So there are gonna be some things though I will caution you on. There will be other things that will tell you, hey, that's a great job, good for you, go for it. Just because other commissioners didn't do that or other commissioners did do this, doesn't mean that you're beholden to that, okay? So the same idea, one thing real quick, talking about the police cars, right? Or the squad cars, you have big equipments, MRF accounts, all that stuff, right? Again, those are policy decisions by you guys, but also by your department heads. Depending on what was going on in any physical year and all that stuff, is probably why they decided to either one, do nothing but lease purchase agreements, or to actually put things in capital accounts, okay? Just depends on what you want to do and where you want to go. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh no, you never want to do that, you want to do this. That's not my role, that's not my job. The next thing I'll tell you also from the civil standpoint, and that's what we're going to get into the open meeting stuff as well, is that I represent the city, okay? I do not want people to get lost on this idea that I'm the city attorney, therefore I represent you. I don't, okay? You collectively are the city commissioners, you make your decisions. I am your, if you believe in the whole process of checks and balances, I am one of said checks and balances, okay? So the same idea, you go back to basic government 101, right? You got the 3 branches of government, the legislative, judicial, and executive. You are in the executive, I am in the judicial, okay? Also in the role, though, as a city attorney, I get to dabble a little bit in the executive, right? But I don't have any underlings under me. I am my own department head, and I am also my own clerk and my own secretary. And I'll tell you, I do a fantastic job at the latter of those two, I'll be honest with you. So, that being said, I also am your city prosecutor, right? So I deal with the criminal stuff, okay? So basically it deals with anything from your tickets, your citations, to, I'm gonna say smaller time misdemeanors, but we're talking DUIs, batteries, more or less thefts, those things like that, okay? We don't deal with drugs, all that stuff goes over to county. Felonies, all that goes over to county, and obviously anything outside the city limits is in the county. I say that, but that's the state. The state's courthouse, all that stuff, okay? Everybody following me there? All right. So, my role then is really to make sure that you stay within the rules or within the bounds of what your job is and what your job title is, okay? So one of the things I will caution you as well as we kind of go through this too, all right? Again, we're talking about the squad cars and all that stuff, and so Brooke, you kind of brought it up in the meeting, and just so you also know, I am not the watcher on the wall. I'm not that guy that's in the background just making for you to screw up, right? That's also not my job. But I will be the one that I will tell you, believe it or not, when I'm not here, I'm actually paying attention and I watch, okay? So these two guys, they can attest to that. There's been times I've showed up and it was just like, oh no. Okay, come on guys, it's the end of the day. You gotta lighten it up a little bit. These guys are having a grand old time. But Brooke, one of the things that you said was we were looking at, you were talking about the policy, or not the policies, the warranties on the cars and the vehicles. Is it 60 miles, 30 miles, whatever it is, all that other stuff, right? And then you said, okay, I'll get that from Don Ann. I will caution you on that, only because, and I will just saying that it's just, it was a perfect topic for me to use this. You guys have a city manager and you have a city clerk, and they need to be your facets for information and communication. And the communication part is important when I get into my open meeting stuff, okay? Because the same idea is, it's not that you're not qualified to do it, but in turn, you really want your people to be that one mouthpiece that they go to Dan Brenner or they go to wherever, so that person hears the same one thing, not a collection of 5 different things. That makes sense?
Perfect.
Because we ran into that before, when it was, I believe, Neil, it was on a pickup, wasn't it? We wanted a pickup. All of a sudden, we got a work order for 2 pickups. We didn't need 2 pickups, okay? But that's because use your people, they're good at what they do. They're qualified for what they do. They've been here a heck of a lot longer than any of us would care to admit, but we're proud that they're here, right? So, on that, use your people, okay? Use them, let them be your communicators, but also let them be the ones to report back to everybody, okay? So that's the segue where I go into the Open Meetings Act, all right? Everybody kind of understands when you kind of get in, you kind of do this, you've now had your second meeting, right? Right? There we go. Yeah, I'm not going to lose you. Come on. Okay? So, it's a little different, isn't it? Sitting up in that seat. Sometimes this thing's a packed house, sometimes there's nobody here, but you know what? The rules apply no matter who's sitting in these chairs, okay? So, when it gets down to it, Kansas has it specifically set out what they believe and what you have to follow as the Open Meetings Act. All that means is, you guys as a collective, when you have a meeting, people are supposed to be able to see it, okay? And sometimes it comes down to these very finite details, and we'll kind of get into that, okay? So number 1, you guys understand you were elected, you are the government body, so you are subject to the Open Meetings Act, okay? And anybody else under you in the city's purview is also subject to that. So even on down to our tree board. Our tree board has a meeting, it's an open meeting, and they have to follow the same rules you do, okay? Library board. The what? Not museum. There. I was getting there. It's only because it just came out. So they're all subject to the Open Meetings Act. Okay. There are things with records. That's CORA, Kansas Open Records Act. Again, you guys don't necessarily have records, but understand that's where all this stuff kind of follows under that stuff. So to go from that, What is a meeting? There's a three-pronged test to it, okay? Some people think like, this makes sense, this is a meeting, right? But it can be also some details or some traps and pitfalls, and we'll kind of go through that. So one, it's any gathering or assembly in person or through the use of telephone or any other medium for interactive communication, right? Okay? So any gathering with interactive communication by a majority of the members of the body, right? So you guys, you got 5 elected, right? Basically what a majority is, it's 1 over your halfway mark. So right now that'd be 2.5. So you are 3. 3 of you as a quorum, 3 of you as a majority, okay? There are some city attorneys out there that have a belief that it's a majority of a quorum. I disagree with that. I don't think there is anybody to support that, but basically what that would get down to is 2 of you. 2 of you hold a conversation, they believe that that would be a meeting. I do not, I think that is incorrect. But that, just so you're aware. Understand, the rules are what they are, but this is not Uno, right? There are gray areas, and I'm going to try and keep you away from those gray areas because there's no reason for us to be playing in that playground, right? So 3, for the purpose of discussing the business or affairs of the public body or the government, right? It doesn't even mean that we have to come to an agreement, but if you're talking about city matters, city issues, something, right? A city idea, that's the topic of discussion, right? So 1, through any means or medium and interactive communication, right? Sitting here in person, that makes sense. It can also be an email chain. It can be, Jason puts together an email, says, hey, I've been really thinking about this idea of a squad car. Let's scrap that. We got 2 squad cars on the agenda. We can budget it, but I would really like to see us have a Batmobile, right? He sends that out, sends it to you 5, right, the 4 of you collectively.
I second.
I told him. He sends that out, and one person, let's just say Ann, she hits that reply all button. That is a discussion, you just held a meeting. Doesn't even have to say I agree with it. Just her simply saying, as long as it's blue. You know? Again, you're discussing it, it's a topic, it involves a majority of you, right? Because she replied all, and there was a discussion, the topic, the idea. That was a meeting, that is a violation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act, okay? The next thing, and this one actually is very, very practical. The after meeting or during recess talk, right? Wow, things got a little heated. Let's go over here and talk for a second. And they go over, and he's talking, and you know, I'll jump around. I don't want to always pick on you guys. Brooks over here, and he's talking to JJ, and then all of a sudden Aaron comes up, and he goes, yeah, what about that? I know, that's crazy, right? Well, I'm thinking we should do something like this. They are now having a meeting. They might just be trying to air it out. They might just be trying to, you know, shoot the breeze. But when they start getting into that, you're having a meeting. That is a violation, okay? It can be just that easy. So now, here's what gets me into this last part. What are called serial communications, okay? These guys know this because we had to talk about this once. Serial communications are, Brooke decides, you know what? We're really going to talk about this sales tax issue. He talks to JJ about it. They both agree, you know what? I agree. We're going to pick 12 years, 15 years, whatever, right? Does that. Brooke then leaves, and then he, as he's walking out the door, he calls up Aaron, and he said, hey, Aaron, been talking to JJ, and I think this is what we want to do. That's a meeting. JJ's not part of it. JJ doesn't know that Brooke's calling Aaron, but it doesn't matter. When it gets down to it, that is a meeting, that is a violation. And just the very same, we can say that we can play the whole telephone game. Brooke talks to JJ, JJ talks to Aaron, Aaron talks to Ann. That collectively, although Brooke doesn't have any idea who's talking to who, JJ doesn't know who's talking to who, that's a meeting. Okay? So, let's wrangle back into this. You want to use your city manager and your city clerk as your means of communication. If there's something you want to tell the whole group, Aaron, hey, I think we really need to talk about this on the next agenda. I want to just put it out there so we can actually start brainstorming ideas. He needs to tell Kent, not, hey, email out to everybody, or text. Text everybody in a group text saying, hey, by the way, I want to talk about these things. Just don't, because all it takes is one reply, and you're in a problem zone. Sending it to Kent, sending it to Mary, tell them, I would like this on the agenda, then they send it out to all of you, okay? So it's not coming from one of you. Does that make sense? Okay. So, let me kind of go through, you guys have in your packet this little,
Jay, just one clarification on that. So if they ask, say, I want the Batmobile on the next agenda, and Mary and I sent, or one of us sends out an email to all 5, if they reply to us, that's not a violation.
correct. But if you reply all, that is a violation.
Okay, so just reply to
So reply
the
to
staff
the
member
member.
who sent it.
Correct. So, in that, then, and this goes for everybody, you may either, one, adopt a policy or the belief that I'm going to send this email, copy and paste, one to Brooke, one to JJ, one to Aaron. So they can't reply all. They're stuck with this. But understand, this is not an individual communication. Or, put it in that email, said, please do not reply to this. This is only for your own information. The next meeting, we will be discussing this. So everybody knows, and therefore you guys don't reply. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? So, that's up to you guys. Again, that's policy decision, but that is the pitfall. That's what can happen there. So, on that, going back to it, just so you don't have to keep notes on my stuff. I know, Brooke, you're keeping tedious notes over there. This is your little, I call this the cheat sheet. This is your open meetings booklet that I like, that I kept, and that's the one I kind of work off of. You guys should have had it in your packet, or you have it in a packet, something like that, okay? Keep that with you, okay? If something comes up, I will tell you, there have been very few things that came up that I could not just find in here in very plain language. That was pretty open and shut, okay? So, following from that, now it's almost 7. Notice of meetings, right? Again, this is important for you to know, but you don't need to do it because you're not the one sending out the notices, right? The idea is that when you have a meeting, you gotta have notice, okay? Understand that the Open Meetings Act doesn't actually require notice to be published or put out there or anything like that. We do it, so therefore you need to follow it. Anybody who specifically requests to have notice given to them, they have to do that, and you have to give them notice within a reasonable amount of time, okay? Next thing, as far as agenda and minutes, same idea. Sounds weird. For a state that's been very strict about what a meeting is, they're pretty wide open on this. Agendas, you don't need them if you're not gonna use them. If you're gonna use one, it has to be open to the public and everything, right? And the other thing I'm gonna tell you too, this thing, because we did actually deal with this once too. What's in your packets outside of closed bids is also open. You're looking at that in a meeting, you have it in a meeting, you bring it to you up here on your desk in a meeting, you can keep your own notes, but understand, anybody in the gallery can actually ask to see what you're doing. Dealt with it, heard about it one time, a city, or it wasn't a city, it was actually a county. They had a letter from their city attorney or county attorney, I can't remember, that discussed a legal issue that they had. Instead of going into an executive session, the commissioners decided, well, it's fine as long as we don't discuss it. And so we sit there and we read it quietly to ourselves in an open meeting. And then when somebody requested to see that letter, they said, oh no, you can't, it's attorney-client privilege. Not anymore, because they brought it to the open meeting, did not go into an executive session to mentally discuss it, if you want to talk about it that way. You collectively are looking at the same thing, you're reading the same thing, that's still discussion, right? So you would think that that was pretty blatant, but it, whatever. Sometimes people do weird things, okay? So that's my job though, is to make sure you guys don't do weird things and you're not going to, right? Right, because then we don't even have to worry about these things anymore. Okay, that brings me to my next thing, which are called executive sessions, okay? This is the one and only place that you can discuss things privately, but there is I call it the 3-step drop to this. I'll give you the gist of executive sessions. You guys following me here? The gist, okay? So you have to have a justification for the closure. That's the statutory provision. There are specific statutory provisions that you can go into executive session under these things, okay? Then there is the subject. What are you going to talk about? Let's talk about non-elected personnel. You do not, and I mean this, you do not go into an executive session, Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session under statute number blah, 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 to discuss a non-elected personnel, to discuss the termination of our police chief. If your police chief is in here And that's the first time he's heard about that, probably not a good idea. Same thing, and you laugh, but this is also a case study too. It also does you no good. It also does you no good to go into an executive session to discuss employment matters, to discuss the sexual harassment claim against our code enforcement officer. Again, that has blown the doors wide open, and your newspaper guy is going to be sitting right there, okay? Don't do that, okay? When it is private, when there's something like that, it is simply this: to discuss the allegations that were presented to us on Monday, to discuss the possibility of different issues with the police chief, to discuss something. Keep it generic. You don't name people either. To talk about a ethical complaint that was filed by Judy Bluty, whatever, okay? You don't. But you have to do the justification, the subject to be discussed, so that we know what you're supposed to be talking about in there, and then obviously the time and the place to reconvene, okay? So again, that's where you heard things like, I think we're gonna need 10 minutes, so it's already 7 o'clock, we're gonna reconvene at 7:10 to discuss non-elected personnel, covering the new contract for our city czar, okay? So there's that, right. So now, inside that executive session though, you speak freely about the topic you're discussing. That is not the time to say, okay, and wait, before we go back in there though, what about this Batmobile? You know, don't do that. Do not do that. If you do come up with another topic, you're gonna come out of executive session, you're gonna make a new motion under the same justification, subject, and the time and place. Go in and talk about that thing, okay? You also cannot take any binding action inside that executive session. You can sit there and say all day, okay, we're gonna do this, so everybody agree, this is what we wanna do, I agree. You come out, you say, okay, Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the budget for blank, or I approve that we go ahead and award the contract to blank, or whatever, and then you vote on it. Does that make sense? And also, just as a practical thing, just because there is an item on your agenda for action does not mean you have to take action, okay? You can table it. If there's something that comes up that you're like, look, I think I want to look into that a little more, then you can table it. If one person wants to table it and everybody wants to move forward, that's what the vote is for, right? I move that we table this. If it gets shot down, then you take your action, okay? So don't ever feel like you are locked into, well, shoot, this agenda that we're not required to put out there is actually already says that we're gonna take an action on it, so I guess I approve. You don't have to, okay? Don't fall for that, okay? Be certain about what you're doing. You're elected for a position, you're elected for a reason. The people put you there because they have confidence in you, so they want you to vote with confidence, okay? All right? Good, good. So why does all this matter? Why is going through all these things, and I'll be honest with you, it's a sexy topic, the Open Meetings Act, right? Why does it matter? Because if you violate it, here's what happens. Basically, somebody can file a complaint or can file a suspicious violation with either the county attorney or the attorney general's office. And no matter what, whether it was an executive session, through an email chain, texting on your phones, or anything like that, they will then in turn send out what I call the probe. And what that is they send you interrogatories, requests for admissions. They will send you subpoenas. They will send people to interview you. We will have to take depositions to discuss what happened in that meeting. Where did this go? How many times have you done that? And if, for instance, you're part of an email chain, but you have the email linked to your private email account, so like, you know, that little blip on your iPhones, and you already have your Gmail, your Yahoo Mail, your City Mail, your USD 352 mail, and all of that comes to that collective inbox. That collective inbox is now subject to an entire subpoena. Okay? I hate to do this, but Hillary Clinton comes to mind, right? It's true. I mean, she was a federal employee and a federal electorate and everything like that, but she had a lot of things on her private phone. Did not save her private phone, right? Now, granted, couldn't save it from a wood chipper either, but at the same time, that's the joke. The point being is, try to keep your city stuff separate. Because if something was to come about, and let's go back to that example of the serial communication, right? Brooke talks to JJ, JJ talks to Aaron. Brooke has no idea that JJ's talking to Aaron, and you two definitely have no idea that these guys are saying anything. You're all gonna get the requests. You're all gonna get that stuff, okay? And now that we've had this discussion tonight, you're all gonna be on your own, okay? That doesn't mean I'm gonna leave you out to dry, right? I'm still gonna represent the city in the interest of the city. And as long as nobody wasn't doing anything blatant, that's where we'll go. But at the end of the day, if it's discovered that a violation occurred and that you did it knowingly, and sometimes knowingly doesn't mean intentionally. Knowingly means like, yeah, but you know that you're not supposed to do that. That's when it falls. You will then be subject to a civil penalty of up to $500 per violation, and it escalates the more times that you do that. If it becomes so blatant, then that's when they do recalls and all that other stuff, and we don't even want to go into that, okay? So, it's not that, well, this is just a pain in the butt, I just want to be able to discuss some of these items. That's fine, but you gotta follow the rules. The rules are very simple. When it comes down to that, always err on the side of doing it in these chairs, okay? When you want to talk about something, there's nothing that says two of you can't discuss and be like, I don't know, I just don't know what I think. Or if you're seeking information, look, I have no idea. I try to understand what Josh is talking about, and quite frankly, all that came across to me was Charlie Brown's teacher. Terabytes, 2 servers. He might as well just sold you guys 5 Xbox 560s or something like that, and I wouldn't even know, and I'm the one sitting back here saying, okay. See, there we go. The point being though, follow the rules, it will be fine. You can discuss things, and if you have questions, use your city manager and your city clerk as your means of communication or as your people to get you that information, okay? So, do you guys have any questions?
I think I may be a little confused. What happens if 3 of us show up to an event?
Good question. Good question. The 3 of you show up to it. So let's talk about Flatlanders. Usually at the end of Flatlanders, there's a hot dog feed or whatever that thing is in the park. And quite frankly, I always want to disappear. But the point being is, you go there, 3 of you are there, and all it takes is one person from the car show to come and be like, hey, been meaning to ask you guys, since we're on this car show, what are we going to do about 8th Street? What do you do, right? Where do you go? Because there's 3 of you. You might be talking about the weather and all that stuff, but that one person comes up and asks you about that. What do you do? What do you think you should do, Am?
I don't want to say try to avoid it, but
You're just gonna run? You're gonna throw a hot dog at it and say,
no, just do it there.
oh, wait, 2026! Here's my suggestion. You can hear them, listen to them, you say, look, I appreciate that, that's something we've talked about, but if you would get a hold of our city manager, he can get you on the agenda.
Gotcha.
But don't talk about it. Let them say it. They are your constituents, right? Same thing. You got somebody that wants to come to your house, or they come to the restaurant, or they want to talk to you. Nothing wrong with that. Because they're not part of the body, right? They're not there. The problem is if one of you, if 3 of you are there and somebody comes up to you, okay? Right? That's where that problem starts, okay? So, in those very weird, rare situations, that is what I would say. You're not avoiding it. You can say, look, we've discussed it, it's something we've always been wanting to talk about, and then, honestly, I would encourage you, please, call our city manager, call our city clerk, get us on the agenda, so that we can actually talk about it in the meeting. I'd love to hear what you have to say, but I want everybody to hear it. Something like that. You're gonna have to be a politician.
Just a little.
Jake, when you're making a motion to go into executive session, do you have to name the employee that you're gonna talk about? Can you just say employment matters?
To discuss employment matters, to discuss an employee in the Parks Department, somebody in the, something like that. I would caution you against naming anybody. I would.
But you could just be general about it and say
Yes.
a city employee. You don't even have to name the department.
Not elected personnel.
Yeah. So, yep. It can be that generic, but you have to do the 3-step drop.
Okay.
I move that we go into executive session under KSA blank, under a non-elected personnel to discuss an employee issue from last week, or whatever. We will reconvene at 7:23, whatever. Okay, yes.
Now, taking the Flatlanders example, we don't have to publish a notice saying 3 of these people are gonna show up at Flatlanders hamburger feed.
No, that's the other thing. I've heard some city managers or city clerks, they take a very cautious route. So like for the holiday party, right? When you had your holiday party, especially when you have to RSVP, so they know at least 3 of you will be there, okay? I have heard of people having the theory of like, okay, we're gonna notice up the party so that they're there and therefore they can discuss and they don't have to worry about violating the Open Records Act or Open Meetings Act. I think that's a little overkill. I do, because this also came up when we were gonna do the strategic doing and stuff like that. I hate to sound this way, but it's just gonna depend. It's gonna depend on what's going on. So for the most part, no. My default is not just because 3 of you are gonna be there. Otherwise, quite frankly, we got a handful of restaurants here. We'd have to notice it up anytime that, basically every Friday night that you guys wanna go have dinner, just because you happen to be in the same building, right? It's not. But there are some times, whether it's a work session, whether it's again, I kind of understood the strategic doing because that inherently requires some discussion about city matters, right? So I kind of follow that, I understand that, but it just depends. But no, you would not be required to notice that. Okay? Any other questions?
No, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
You bet. With that, I'm going home.
Thank you.
city manager to just verify that the warranty is the same and like nothing changes.
Oh, okay.
You know, I just want clarification there just to make sure is all.
Not hardly anything, just thanks to all the city employees, thanks for what you do, because I don't want to do it all, so thank you.
Okay.
I like to say the same about the city employees. It's hard work. We appreciate it. I also like to put it out for the SCCD. Everything that you guys have been doing to actually get more community involvement. Since I do have a place on Main Street, it is noticed. And so I'd like to say thank you for that.
Jason?
Report for me, thank you.
All right, for the mayor's report, I just want to say thank you to the staff. Thank you again. The Christmas party, or the after Christmas party, whatever we called it, was a good time. So thank you to everybody who was involved in putting that together. Just want to say thank you to the commissioners. I look forward to our next strategic discussion.
Yeah.
I thought the last one went very well. I'm looking forward to doing it again with you guys. One more thing, another plug for you. If you guys aren't on the email list that gets sent out of all the things that are coming up, that is a fantastic thing. I don't know if you want to stand up and do a quick plug on how to get on that.
At gogoodland.org, not .com, and I'll add you to that email list. We also have a new website that we're finishing updating and all of that, and there's actually a community page that will have all the events, USD 352, Northwest Tech, athletics, and community stuff going on that will coincide with that email. So any community events that are going on, fundraisers, things like that, we just want everyone to be in the know that there's stuff going on and we want people to show up. So that website is called thetopsideofkansas.org. So, yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
And that's it for me. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Moved by Commissioner Redland. Second by Commissioner Showalter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 7:13 p.m. Thank you, guys.